Why, hello there, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. My name is DB333, and welcome to Hearts of Iron 4, the New Order Last Days Europe as the Reichskommissariat Ostafrika. Now, in the last video, what did we do? Nothing particularly nice. We decided to develop the SS a little bit more. And, yeah. Currently working on, also enough slave munitions. We'll go ahead and get working on improving the, our troops in one of these areas. I'm thinking probably the desert's going to be the best play, because if I'm not mistaken, plains, lots of hills, but I think a lot of this is desert, yeah. So, we're only really going to have to push into desert coming up. And then after that, I think that's it war-wise for us, so it's not going to matter too much. So, we're nearing the end of our ability to enact hard mode, which I think I'll be fine. I'm not worried about it. So, we could get some more steel, though. So, let's get that steel. We're getting there. We'll be done soon enough. So, let's go ahead and get to playing. And I just realized I have a Duolingo lesson that is still open that I need to finish, or else I'm going to lose my, 67-day streak. So, we're going to have to read this and all that. I'm going to have to fucking do it in between. Reichskommissar Hutig strode back and forth before the line of soldiers standing in attention to the baking midday sun. Irritated at being dragged from his work in the palace, he looked them over, sorting each into two kinds of officers sent to him by the Reich. SS officers considered too ideologically dangerous for the pseudo-degenerates in Germania, and a motley of incompetents, idiots, and failures who'd been judged deficient of more meretricious service. As usual, most would be useless, bodies in uniform sent to reinforce outposts or plantations. There were a handful of men who showed promise, but they were the exception. The Reichskommissar had to admit to himself, for the most part, the men under his command were unmotivated, undisciplined, low on morale, and ideologically wayward. Well, you just have to find some way to make it work. Listen up! He barked, startling some of the men who had begun to doze in the sun. Whoever you were in the past, you are now men of the Ostafrikan Officer Corps, a band of brothers, dedicated to the immortal cause of National Socialism. Understand that we come to civilize the land, to wrench it from the subhuman natives who do not deserve its bounty, and the pathetic colonist degenerates who failed in the same task. This is a great opportunity. You have been sent here to the borders of our beloved Reich, because our Führer judged you to have the strength to advance the Aryan race in this strange and wild land. So though your new surroundings may seem strange, though you may learn for your homes, do not forget that you are the most important bulwark against these subhumans and the degenerates. Hutig had not expected many moved by his speech. Most of them stared at him sullenly. Hutig was not blind to the concerns of his men. He knew many viewed Ostafrika's punishment position and were reluctant to be there. Nevertheless, he also saw the gleam his words had provoked in a couple of men he had judged as being the creme de la crop. If only he had more men like that, he could impose the ideals of National Socialism over the whole continent. No, more than that. The whole world would tremble at the feet of their rightful Aryan masters. For now, he thought ruefully he'd have to do with what he could with the dregs. Bearers of a spark from the sacred fire. Next up, slave munitions. Those extra factories are going to be nice. So, who said that a slave can't fight in the Reich? Of course, they'll never be willing to take up arms for the defense of the master races, but this doesn't make them entirely useless. They can still work in our factories supplying the brave Aryans fighting for our homeland. Men, women, and elders and children, all will serve the Reich of the 1,000 years. No matter what their capabilities, no matter their opinions, no matter the cost in human lives. There we go. Take some water. I'm going to open my Duolingo lesson. I can't listen right now. I'm recording. I know it's... I'm learning German, actually, which is funny. I think it's... Das Essen? Yes! Das Essen, that's it. Okay. Entschuldigung. Wo ist die... Eine Minute, bitte? Is it Kellner or Speisekarte? Menu. Speisekarte? Yeah! There we go. And then we have one last exercise. Oh, goddammit, I have to type it out. Luckily, it's the same thing I fucking selected. Entschuldigung. Wo ist das... How do I spell it? Speisekarte. Oh, I type that. Fucking typos. Okay. I'll focus on this for now. Awareness returned to Hutik rapidly. He cursed under his breath, drew his hands away from his thumping head, and assumed a straightened posture. Last night's drink would not be allowed to affect present behavior, after all. A weak state of mind was nothing more than middling degeneracy. The drink was not entirely without merit, however, as the epiphany it provided with him had prompted his meeting. Come in, Gunther. Hutig noticed his hands fidget nervously as he took a seat. A good sign, his image preceded him. Reichskommissar, you wanted to speak with me? Hutig thought for a moment, choosing his words carefully. Gunther, I'm sure you've noticed the, discrepancies between our policy and that of our neighbors? Recognizing his subordinate's wariness to speak frankly, he continued. In a foreign land such as this, loyalty to the fatherland is of utmost importance. We remain surrounded by subhumans, savages and vessels of corruption. It is precisely for this reason that I call upon you, a most steadfast SS officer, for this assignment. Upon the realization that it was not a disciplinary meeting, Gunther's tense disposition relaxed. The Reichskommissar may have been a paranoid man, but Gunther was clearly not the one under suspicion today. Hutig slid a satchel across the desk and peered into Gunther's eyes. You are to enter Central Africa under the guise of reassignment. Enclosed are all the relevant documents. Observe operations there, and take care to remember the highest ideals of the fatherland. After a period of a week, expect a corrective order, and another reassignment vest. When you have finished the task, you are to report directly to me, and me alone. Do you possess sufficient understanding to fulfill your duty? Gunther nodded, hailed, and was gone as quickly as he arrived. Alone with his hangover yet again, Hutig clenched his fist. He would uncover their corruption and finally correct the heinous mistakes of his superiors. Perhaps then he would no longer be forced to maintain order alone in Africa. He poured himself a drink. Let's hope this operation bears fruit. So I'm wondering, it's not appearing here. There's going to be something that pops up, I think, eventually, to look into the, corruption. The alleged corruption, at least. Ooh, did that break things? Oh, it did break things. Oh, dear. That's not how it's supposed to go. I mean, the West Indies is looking pretty thick, and I do like that. But, yeah. Deeply inhaling the heavy scent, the heady scent, Hutig tipped his head back to swallow the cognac in a single gulp. Savoring the rich, bitter tang was enough to take him outside of himself for a single moment of indescribable bliss. He felt himself floating, weightless until the cacophony of the cicadas, the glowing sensation of the sun's infernal rays on his alabaster skin, drew him back to reality. Oh, there goes gravity. Oh, that's enough of that joke. Parting his eyelids, for a moment he saw nothing but a hazy silhouette as his eyes were forced to adjust to the harsh afternoon light. As his vision cleared, he saw the slave, tied to a post, his bared back facing the gathered dignitaries. Hutig lazily raised his hand, feeling the sweat pool in his armpit coolly trickle down his flank. "Proceed," he ordered, slowly shifting his gaze to the officers with the whip. The slave cried out through the gag in his mouth, as a fierce red gash appeared across his shoulder. Crack. It was joined by another. As the blood from the first oozed down his back, Hutig held his glass behind him, where it was dutifully refilled. He sipped, frowning. The slave had been assigned such a simple task, to fix the teeth-rattling, migraine-inducing creak in his chair, and yet this effortless chore had somehow evaded him. Seeing the glass upon the table, Hutig looked at his underlings through the corner of his eyes. He enjoyed giving them a sudden summons to his place to test how obediently they would respond. Bayer had arrived within an hour, driving up from Quelimane, and Chmielewski had arrived shortly after by helicopter from his villa. Mengele had sent his apologies, insisting it was close to a breakthrough. Oh no. Sorry. It was the third time, making Hutig ponder if he'd have to do something with him. They turned his stomach. To Hutig, his subordinates were barely less degenerate than Rome's slaves. Bayer, watching the punishment with barely concealed boredom, was a drunk and a glutton. Chmielewski, on the other hand, had a sickly light in his eyes and seemed to thrill at every crack of the whip. He had heard of Chmielewski's villa, of leather couches, bookbindings, and lampshades made from the hide of disobedient slaves. Hutig felt his stomach turn with distaste as he looked back to his slave. Neither of them had anything close to his purity, his strength. They were barely fit to call themselves Aryan. Hutig watched the rest of the spectacle without passion. Slaves may not always be reliable, needing the whip to put them on the right path, but through the labor of these subhumans, he would be able to secure his legacy and turn Ostafrika into a titan of industry, crown jewel of the Reich. Smiling, he motioned for another splash of cognac. The mind of man is capable of anything. Yeah, no shit. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and master the desert. While most Africa has no desert to speak of, South Africa has wide extensions of sand and dry land, making it essential to have troops skilled in desert warfare. With the legacy of the Africa Corps still venerated throughout the army, with all the experience we need to ensure that, in the event of an actual offensive, we can field troops capable of fighting in their native soils, negating any advantage they would get by fighting close to their home. Now that works for me, so we'll go ahead and do that. In fact, where's our field marshal? We already have a desert fox with Forstner. I think, well, Forstner is better rounded out all around, but we only really need attack, I think, for the most part. So, Hutig it is. In the meanwhile, invest the GDP. And we could reduce patrols, but I don't think that's needed. I like how we get a boost for construction speed, even though we can't build shit. I think it's funny. I don't know how fully planned out it was, but what are you gonna do? We really need to get rid of Chmielewski, goddamn. Ooh. Hudig stared at the photographs before him, turning his pieces of his last conversation over in his mind. He'd succeeded beyond his wildest expectations. Numerous inefficiencies, mass consumption of subversive media, forged documents, and in some cases even subhuman administrators. It was a treasure trove of treachery and corruption. He had never been an emotional man, but the present moment moved him deeply. A wry smile crossed his face as he leaned backwards in his seat. All the paranoia, the self-doubt, the maddening flights with his superiors, it all meant something. The smiling showman, the cowardly degenerate, might finally be relieved of duty, freeing the fatherland and hooting himself of their entitlement and insolence. The satisfaction was overwhelming. He rose from his desk and headed towards the door. However, before he reached the handle, a flood of negative emotions returned, paralyzing him. Something felt wrong. If the bureaucrats in Germany had ignored his warnings once more, could they do it again? Even if the evidence seemed damning to him, would it be so to a man 1,000 miles away? He needed more. So it was that Hudig returned to his desk and began drafting even grander plans. It was to purge the filth from this continent. He would need an irrefutable, overwhelming assault. A new investigation would commence, even more thorough than the last. But Devil would have his due. Hudig had waited years for such a moment. He could wait a bit longer. Begin the investigation. And here we are. The investigation. Holy shit. This is fucking LA Noire in Hearts of Iron, isn't it? We are not in Africa alone, and for years have been forced to share the administration of a German Africa with our fellow countrymen in Central Africa and Südwest Africa. Yet, whilst the Reich appears blind to the stunning incompetence of Reichskommissars Müller and Schenk, Hans Hutig is no fool. Our agents shall infiltrate regimes, from bottom to the top. We shall gather the evidence of their degeneracy, their incompetence, their treasons, and shall deliver it straight to the Führer's desk. Well, let's secure funding from Germania. And yeah. I think we'll save up right now for a little bit to get more political power. Eventually we'll go from there. I want to really investigate these guys. We can get a operative. Let's get Hannah Hartmann. I'll go with Hannah Hartmann. I'll have a look at this name because it reminded me of a kind of close to the name of a girl I went to high school with. Shit, what was her last name? It was something kind of close. I don't know. Wait, hold on. Let me go back to S operatives. Well, howdy, partner. Looks like we got ourselves a 4-4. I'll have to think about that a little bit longer, and I mean, it's not exactly something I'd feel comfortable talking about on here, just because I don't want to put anyone else's info out on the internet. I feel weird enough talking about my own stuff on the internet, but anyone else, yeah, that's not, no. Hudig felt the sun scorch the tops of his ears as he strode through the swirling dust, flanked by Bayer and Chmielewski, each glancing aside at the other and attempting to move subtly to the Reichskommissar, then his rival. Sorry, I had to check something real quick. Hudig noticed none of his jockeying for his approval, focusing his attention instead on his soldiers, engaged in a mock battle in the dune expanse that stretched before them to the far horizon. It had not been easy to track down distinguished men who'd served in North Africa, and it had been even harder to convince them to uproot themselves and travel halfway across the globe to Ostafrika in their twilight years to train a new generation of German soldiers in desert warfare. If he had expected there would soon be war with the South African degenerates, his men would need to comport themselves in the arid, desolate terrain of the Bushfield. Reaching the crest of the hill, Bayer and Chmielewski, panting with exertion behind him, Hudig greeted the advisors. Sipping tea and lounging in camp chairs, there were a trio of overweight men with bristly white mustaches. I was going to say mustaches, but mustaches is funner to say. Who he had found difficult to distinguish. As he was handed a pair of binoculars, he wondered how men such as them could have come to be war heroes. On the hill the sun was as hellishly bright as ever, but down in the dry basin the men had kicked up a tremendous cloud of dust. Watching them through the binoculars, Hutig wondered if they could even see each other through the gloom. Still, he supposed this was the kind of thing they'd have to get used to if they were going to be victorious in South Africa. It was inconceivable that something so inconsequential as terrain could stand in the way of the spread of National Socialism. They were conquerors, and for that, you only want brute force. I don't know if you only want that, but Now let's get some more steel. And let's prepare the werewolves. In the event of an enemy victory, they won't be able to celebrate. As a last duty towards the fatherland and his race, any true Aryan must resist enemy occupation with all his strength. Just as our great Fuhrer did during the war, Ostafrika shall establish a fully functional werewolf guerrilla for the eventuality of defeat. With hidden supply depots scattered across the jungles and loyal officers and troops hiding all throughout Africa, we shall strike like 1,000 hornets from all sides. If we aren't destined to dominate the Dark Continent, it is our sacred duty to ensure that no one else is. No one. Well, there we go. Bulgaria sided with Germania. Go figure. Unassigned divisions. Ooh. Let's see if Sky on. Welsh Union's capitulated. Alright, sorry, that's a different mod. Speaking of which, Kaiserreich had a new update come out. Been meaning to give it another shot, but wasn't quite sure what. I was thinking maybe revisiting Serbia, because that was actually the first. Ooh. Kaiserreich was actually my first Kaiserreich playthrough was actually as Serbia. So I figured it might be fun to give a fun little what am I trying to think of? What am I trying to say? It would be nice to go back and pay tribute. You know, go back into a piece of dogboat history, reopen that book, and just kind of go back. So I might actually do that. So I guess I leaked the possible new series. It might be coming soon. Gently swirling a mouthful of cognac, Hutik fixed Bayer with a piercing glance. The corpulent old reprobate across from him flinched a little, already shivering from the polar temperature of the office's dozen oscillating fans. Setting the glass down on the desk, just heavy enough to make a clink, Hutik asked his underling, "Fight to be fight, Bayer." Bayard studies his search for the answer to Hutik. To achieve victory, Vash Kamazar? Making Bayer look pale with a look of the utmost content, Hutik rose and began to pace around the room, followed by Bayer's nervous eyes. Victory. Ja, Bayer. We seek victory. Victory. For our beloved Reich, for our Führer, und for the immortal science of National Socialism. We fight so we may purify this land, scare away all the barbarity, savagery, and degeneracy of Africa, and erect a new edifice in its place, a monument to the Aryan will to prevail against all odds. Pure. Bayer. We will make Africa pure. What would we do, however, if the unthinkable came to pass, if against all probability, the barbarians should, prevail? Stuttered Bears, who did whatever. We must continue the fight, Bayer! To the last man! We must make them pay for every inch of blood-votted soil. If we cannot rule Ostafrika, nobody will! You will form a new unit comprised of the most skilled and trustworthy men. They will be known as a Werwolf. Ensure that they are trained in sabotage, guerrilla warfare, and anti-occupation tactics. Spearing Bear with another sharp glance, who to continue in a subdued tone. Understand that this must be of the greatest secrecy. Although this is a contingency plan, we must not give the impression that we are in any way preparing for defeat. Pouring himself another glass of cognac, Hutik looked up to find Bayer frozen in place. "You're dismissed!" I saw him open his mouth wide, as though he had wanted to swallow all the air, all the earth, all the men before him. And on that ominous little note, I'm going to leave it here, folks. Thank you as always for watching. If you like this video, leave a like. If not, feel free to dislike. If you want to see more of this content in the future, hit the sub button from uploads every weekday as well as occasionally Saturdays. If you have any comments, feedback, concern, anything of the sort, leave them in the comment section below. I read all the comments I get and appreciate any and all feedback you might have for me. If you want to chat, play games, anything of the sort, leave it. Check out the Discord down linked below. If you want to send me bucks my way every month, I have a Patreon. If you want to see me do a sort of lot, I have a Twitch, all of which are down in the description box below. Thank you as always for watching, ladies and gentlemen. My name has been DB333, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.